sly, graphic text, Safeguarding the Future. Part 2, The Importance of Vision, with Jeremy Ward. Logos, Belonging Matters, NDIS, talksthatmatter.net.
Now, I just want to move on to talk about the importance of a vision, because if we're going to engage in planning, and I know that many of you have already done a lot of this, and I hope I'm not, teaching grandmothers to suck eggs, so to speak, but we can't plan unless we know where we want to go. So in that pre-COVID world, when we were able to travel where we wanted to and were able to financially and so on and so forth, we would always do some planning. Our vision was to have a lovely break at the beach or up in the mountains or whatever, and we would plan it. We didn't just set off for 2 weeks in the car and with absolutely no plan, not knowing where we wanted to go. And it's the same here, where we're looking at the lives of our loved ones with disability. We need to know where we're going. We need to know what they want in the future, and we need to know what we want for them. So a vision is really just a statement of what we and our family members want in the future. It's really nothing more than that. It can be very brief, and it can be quite long and detailed. And importantly, the clearer our vision is, the easier it will be to plan. So just when we were able to go on holidays and we would plan for them, the more detailed our plan, the clearer the vision of what we wanted to do in our couple of weeks away, the easier it was to plan for it. But just as importantly, the clearer our vision, the easier it is to stick to our plan, So it allows us to really take some power and control over what we want for the future and for our family member and what they want, to help them achieve what they want. It gives us an opportunity to dream, to think about the big picture rather than just be drawn down into the nitty-gritty of our very busy daily lives. And it allows us to develop our own views and not be driven by other people's views. And I'm sure that you've all experienced this, that other people, often very close to you and dear to you, maybe immediate family, will often think that the views that you have about what you want for your future or for your family member's future are pretty crazy, and they'll try to influence you. Now, if you're not clear about what you want, it's quite easy for them to do that. But if you are clear, it allows you to withstand the pressures from others. The pressures, as I said, that can come from all quarters. So, how do we do this? Well, the very important point is that families, and when I say families, I want to make it clear that I'm talking about people with disability. Of course, people with disability are part of families, and we hope. It's very, very sad and unfortunate when people with disability don't have immediate family members around them. But families and people with disability need to take the lead. This is not the sort of planning that should be initiated by services or the NDIS. It's not their business. For one thing, much of the discussion will be private to you and your family member with disability. It's what we call family business. Now, services, if you're involved with a service organisation providing or assisting to provide support for you or your family member with disability, then they have service business, what they agree to do. And it's very important that they're clear about. But one thing that is not their business, that is not service business, is to tell you what you or your family member should be doing with their lives, what they should be doing in the future, how they should be spending their time, and so forth. And as we go forward to develop our vision and our plan, it's always important to include others, family, close friends, and allies. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of the safeguarding strategies, but I know that in our family, I'll just briefly talk about my daughter Mena. She was born with and diagnosed with cerebral palsy as basically at 8 months old, and always used a wheelchair, needed support for basically for practically all aspects of her life. And when we first started looking at her future and planning really around school and education, we didn't actually ask any of our immediate family. We asked another group of people. And we realised over time that that was a mistake, because we were leaving our family behind. And no wonder they thought we were crazy, because they weren't involved in our planning and our thinking, and, you know, they just really didn't understand. So later we began to involve, you know, my sister with a disability got it from the beginning. I didn't have to, you know, but my other sister, her twin sister, needed to be part of things to really begin to understand. So it is important to include others, and we don't have time to go into, you know, the mechanics of that really, but I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But before we get there, so we're looking at planning. So what do we focus on? You might say, well, isn't it obvious? You know, it's the future, it's what someone might want, what we might want. A very good exercise is to focus on what we call the good life. Now, it sounds like, you know, a bit of sort of self-help mantra, and there's been a lot of written about the good life from all sorts of different perspectives. But I hope that all of you understand basically what the good life is. It's what we want out of life. It's what we would prefer. We don't necessarily get it all, but it's what we want. So what I'm going to do now is ask you to just choose 9 things that for you personally, this is an exercise for you personally involved in this webinar. If you are a parent, it's not about your sons and daughters with disability. If you are a brother or sister, it's not about your brother and sister with disability. If you're a person with a disability, it is certainly all about you. And if you happen to be here involved in this webinar as a worker of some sort, professional even, you know, in the disability sector, try to think of some particular, well, you're not here for a particular person that you may have come along today to get some information about, or to help you, you know, in relation to supporting them and serving them. This is all about you. So I'm going to ask you to do that. So just write them down. We'll give you a minute or so. You've got a bit of paper handy. Just write them down. It's going to be personal. You don't have to share it if you don't want to. And in doing this, you can think about everything from the everyday things that make a difference for you, and the big picture things. So it can be everything from that crucial cup of coffee first thing in the morning, or cup of tea if you're like me, that really makes the day start well and constitutes the good life for you. Or it can be a really big picture issue, such as, you know, a sustainable planet, for example. So just think all the way through, big, little, and try and do it quickly. Don't think too much about it, and don't worry about what you write down. You know, just try and get 9. So we'll just, I'll just sit here and think for a couple of minutes, make sure I'm sort of on track, and while I allow you to do that. Okay, let's then move on. If you haven't managed to write all of them down just yet, you can keep on doing it while we go forward. If we were in a live workshop, I'd have a better way of knowing who's still working hard and who's done it and so forth, but we don't have a lot of time. So let's move on now. If you are in a group today, let's say there are 3 of you from one family sitting around or on your own different, you know, devices, but in the same place, you might like to quickly compare what you've written down. You don't have to, but you might like to do that. And the things to look for are, you know, what are the common themes? They won't all be the same. Some of you love quiet time. Some of you can't stand being by yourself. It's surprising how many people that I've spoken to, they're typically people of my age and generation who are retired and who haven't had to go through extreme lockdown conditions, although we did have some fairly significant periods in Queensland, who actually enjoyed this period, you know. But I'm not saying that there are any of you in Melbourne who are enjoying it right now. I don't assume that at all. So what I'm now going to do is show you what other people have said. Now, I've conducted this exercise in workshops over probably 15 years or so in the past, and all over Queensland and interstate, some interstate. Also once in New Zealand. I should have given the participant from Dunedin, I think, is it, from New Zealand? That is just extraordinary. And I wish we could send a bit of heat from up here your way. So have a look at that. This is just a group. I don't remember where it was. I don't remember how many people there were. There might have been 20, 30 people, might be even less. But you'll see the sorts of things that they came up with. And here's another one. So, you know, I get them at the end of an exercise to, we do a sort of a bit of a share and we write them all up on a whiteboard, and then I've just taken photos of them, and you'll see there again. Now, if you look at that, you won't see anything to do with disability. You won't see people saying, I want the best quality group home that I can find for my son or daughter. Or you don't say, I want a really, you know, fantastic nursing home for me when I get older. Or, you know, it's all about these issues that really impact on all of us. Now, there will be differences, obviously. So, for example, here you've got someone wants a hot bath. Some people can't stand hot baths. You might, going back here, you've got faith. Some people don't, you know, having a faith, religious faith isn't important. I don't know how many of you wrote down sex. Whoever did that was rather, well, maybe not brave, but, you know, I think it only happened once or twice. But they're common themes of family, community, financial security, good health, friends, being able to take holidays, having time to yourself. These are the issues, you know, that everybody talks about. And I guess my point is, in showing this, is, well, if what you've chosen today, and we can't unfortunately compare all of your 9 issues, but I would be very surprised indeed, if they didn't mirror these sorts of points that other groups have made. Now, if this is what we want for ourselves, why wouldn't we want that for our family members with disability? And if you're a family member participating today and, you know, you've written up these sorts of things, why wouldn't those who are supporting you to get the best possible meaningful life, why wouldn't they be doing this to support you and assist you to achieve, you know, what for you is the good life? Now I'm going to challenge you, and we can't take much time on this, but you're going to have to give up 4. Now, if we were in a, you know, face-to-face workshop, I'd be wandering around putting I wouldn't be putting the heavies on you, but I'd be saying, well, come on, I know it's hard. Of course it's hard. But I'm asking you to give up 4. And so what I'm asking you to do, just quickly, again, is to give them up. Give up 4 of your 9. And it's tough. I mean, some of you are thinking, but I can't. Some people are thinking, but I have to choose between friends and good health. Some people might be choosing between their love of red wine and having family in their lives. It's tough, but I'm asking you to do that. And then I'm asking you, as you do that, and once you've done that, to think about the typical lives of many people with disability. Many people with disability don't even get the 5 left. So you've got 5 left out of your 9. You've chosen 9. I'm asking you to give up 4. You're left with 5. the sad reality for many people with disabilities is that they don't even get those 5. So if you found it hard to give up 4 of your 9, it's worth thinking about the people with disability in your life, whether they, how much of what you believe is the good life they are able to achieve. So you can take that little exercise back to your broader networks and do it yourselves. I think it's a very useful way of starting the discussion, if you haven't already done so, about vision and planning. The other aspect of what we focus on is an inclusive life. So I'm suggesting we avoid all activities that are segregated or congregated or exclusive or special, have a special in front of them as possible. Now, I'm not suggesting it's always possible. It isn't. But the important thing is we go for it. We try. We aim for it. You may never achieve the full, complexity of the vision that you want, but I can tell you that if you don't have a vision and it doesn't include a focus on issues like the good life and an inclusive life, then you certainly won't get it, and your family members certainly won't achieve that. So I'm just going to now talk a little bit about my daughter Mena. As I said, Mena had lifelong disability. Mena died 11 years ago now. Her diagnosis was changed in her 20s to being a degenerative mitochondrial condition. But we developed this vision statement when she was about 10. And we were struggling to get her into a regular school. And these questions, these elements are all important. That she be valued, that she be able to grow up as a citizen, and that this happen in her local community, not just in the community, in her local community. So when we went along to a school and said we want local school, and we said we want her to come to this school, we would say, this is because we want this vision to be achieved for her. We want her to be a valued citizen in her local community, and we know that you hope that for all of the children in your school. So why wouldn't we want that for Mena? I developed this graphic at about the same time, so it's slightly clunky in terms of some of the wording, I guess, but maybe not. But the first thing we wanted to achieve for Mena in order to realise this vision was that she be surrounded by people in her own home when she grew up, have some sort of a meaningful job when she grew up, family, friends, allies, have fun, and to be a support circle. The next thing was that all her sort of specialised equipment needs be met, and her healthcare. She had lots of healthcare needs. She was in and out of hospital as a child and then as a young adult. She needed motorised wheelchairs. She needed a van that was modified. She needed modified housing. She needed therapists. And eventually, when we began to get a bit of funding, she never lived in the NDIS world. She lived in all that pre-world where her funding was pretty difficult to get, certainly in Queensland, that eventually she would have some paid support workers. And finally, we wanted her to be financially secure. So we worked on our wills. We knew that we would need a trust in our will because we were fairly certain that even from a young age, Mena wouldn't be able to manage her own money. We wanted her, as all parents do, for their sons and daughters, that she have a good degree of financial security. And we wanted issues around decision-making and money management to be sorted out. But importantly, when we looked at this, we realised that if we couldn't get it all, we obviously wanted it all, but if we couldn't get it all, we wanted this most. We wanted people around her, and we wanted her to be able to live in her own home and have some meaningful work, and because we knew that that's where you make friends around, in employment, and we wanted her in her own home. I knew a lot about segregated accommodation and sheltered workshops from my sister Margaret's experience and her friends. I didn't want any of that. So that's what we wanted first. And we wanted all the others. But if we had concentrated on C, which is all the, wills and trusts and so forth, as important as they are, and failed to work in this middle area, then she could have grown up to being a financially secure but very vulnerable young woman with no one looking out for her life being driven by services, equipment being provided by what a service thought she needed rather than what she or the people close to her realised she really needed. And if we had worked really hard here in the middle, we assumed that the people here would make sure that all this would be sorted pretty well, So we wanted it all, but we wanted A most and wills and trusts, etc. least. Now, a lot of families start at C. They see planning for the future about sorting out wills and so forth. And that is important, as I said, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that next week if you've registered for that webinar.
Graphic, text. Like to learn more from Jeremy about safeguarding the future? Planning for the future, what to avoid, succession planning and the NDIS, safeguarding a vision and plan, whole of life planning, circles of support and more. Visit talksthatmatter.net, premium video, subscribe for as little as $10. Belonging Matters is a not-for-profit organisation. All proceeds support the inclusion of people with a disability. Logos, Talks That Matter, Belonging Matters. Graphic, image, book cover, The Shouted Goodbye by Jeremy Ward. Text. For more detail about topics discussed by Jeremy, purchase his book at www.belongingmatters.org. Closing slide, graphic, text. This video was made possible with the support of a National Disability Insurance Agency grant. Produced by Belonging Matters. Belonging Matters makes every effort to provide accurate and up-to-date material. However, information is subject to change and our material is for reference only. In regard to wills and trusts, we recommend speaking to a legal advisor in your state. Logos, NDIS, Belonging Matters, talksthatmatter.net.